Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be doing a video for very beginners, people who are just starting dot painting and just want to learn the basics. I'm just going to do a really simple design and try to give you a foundation for learning this type of art. So what you'll need today is something to paint on. These are pre-made stones. I do not make these myself. For video's sake, these are the easiest for me to work on, but you can do a natural rock that you found outside, or if you want, you can get some molds and learn how to make these yourself, or you can also buy blank ones of these. I've seen them on Etsy if you just want to purchase them. They're nice and smooth and perfectly round, and they already have the center dot figured out there, which makes it nice and easy. So this is what I'll be painting on today. This is 3 inches. So you'll need a surface to paint on. I've already painted this one black, and I use Folk Art multi-surface pure black paint for the base. I prefer a multi-surface paint for the base because it's a lot more durable. So you can use any type, but I definitely recommend a multi-surface if you have it. And then you'll need your paint, and I only use Deco Art Americana. I don't really have any other paint. I've ventured out and tried to use other brands, and honestly, I just feel like as far as consistency and texture for dot painting, that Deco Art Americana, it's been the best that I've found so far. So if you are a beginner and you're just starting and you're going to get your paints, if possible, I know that they don't sell this in every country, but if you're able to get some Deco Art Americana, I would definitely recommend it. I've seen a lot of people that are just beginning go out and get all different types of paint from the store and then come to find out that it really doesn't work well for this type of painting. So Deco Art Americana can be a little bit more pricey, but it's gonna save you money in the long run because the texture and consistency is great right out of the bottle. You don't really need any mediums to make it thicker or thinner. So if you are able, I definitely recommend starting with Deco Art Americana. So I will be using Purple Pizzazz, Eucalyptus Leaf, Cactus Flower, Glorious Gold, and Sapphire. You can use really any colors for this pattern. So there's my paints. I will be using a stencil. I don't always use a stencil, but I find that for purposes of doing tutorials and teaching, it makes it a lot easier. If you are just starting out, I do recommend using a stencil just so that you can get a better idea and more practice with spacing. This will be very helpful. I will leave a link to all the products that I use in the description below, these included. I will be using this rainbow set of tools, which I will also link in the description below. I like using this rainbow set. There are other ones that I found on Amazon that are just clear, but when I film videos, I like using this specific set so then I can just tell you guys which color I'm using, because to be honest, I have no idea what sizes these are. So we'll be using these rods as well as these nail stylus tools. So those will be our tools. Then you will need some type of either a chalk pencil or watercolor pencil. It's totally up to your preference. I prefer to use chalk pencil, so that's the one that I'm going to use today. This will help us make our guide marks with the stencil, and the chalk is also really easy to wipe off once you're done. And then you may just need a couple Q-tips in case we make a mistake. This will be really easy to wipe off. And some type of palette. Okay, let's get started. So we are gonna go in and make some guidelines. Like I said, this rock that is an artificial rock made with a mold already has the center figured out. If you are not using a mold that has a center, you will need to find it. I don't really have a great YouTube video for that yet on how to find the center of a rock, but I have seen some on YouTube, so you could definitely search for that, hopefully find a helpful video. So I'm just gonna place that center right over. This is a little tricky because the rock is curved and these are not, so we'll do our best. I'm just gonna kind of just enhance these a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna go back over, try to line these back up. So guide marks are an interesting thing. And I know if you're just started, you might look at this and think like, what the heck am I gonna do with those lines? And the thing with mandala painting specifically is that a lot of it is about the flow and just going with the process, because even though we're doing guide marks and doing our best to plan things out ahead of time, it doesn't always end up going the way that you thought, and you have to be flexible, you have to be able to adapt as you go. And when we're making guide marks, we're not necessarily going to be using all of these lines, but as you'll see as you go, especially if you start working on bigger projects, you want to have the guide marks there in case you need them. You might not need them, but if you do need them, it's nice to have more. Honestly, the more lines that you can have going outward and circular around, the better. I hope that makes sense, and you'll kind of see as we go with this pattern. We might use the guide marks, we might not. Now that we have the guide marks, we're gonna go ahead and do the first center dot. And I'm gonna be using the pink tool. So you just wanna kind of circle it around in there. You just wanna make sure that it's fully covered. And you also wanna make sure that there's a little peak at the bottom. That just tells you that there's enough paint on the tool, and that will actually give you a more perfect circle. Okay, so now we're just gonna dot right over that center dot. And I'm not actually touching fully the rock. I'm just kind of what we call kissing it. So you're just hovering over the top, and I just kind of dot it a couple times to make sure that it's even. Okay, next I'm gonna take the pink tool, the small end of the pink tool, and now I'm gonna do our first dots going around the center. So for this, I will use the grid lines. So first I'm gonna go north-south to try to make this easier. And you wanna get as close to the pink dot as possible without actually touching it. If you do touch it, the paints could bleed together. So you want to make sure that you're going just right above it. So there's our north. Now we're going to go south. And we're using these grid lines. Then we're going to go east and west. So now the grid lines aren't really going to line up for this part, but that's okay. Like I said, use some of the guide marks and some of them you don't. So now we're just gonna eyeball kind of right in between the dots that we just made. You can be very analytical with this type of art, but I prefer a lot more go with the flow and kind of eyeballing things, and if it doesn't work out, you can always wipe it off and try again. So don't put too much pressure on yourself. It's not a huge deal. It's okay if things aren't perfect, and just practice as much as you can and you will definitely get better along the way. So now we're gonna try to fit 2 dots in that center there. So you wanna get them as close together without touching. And here, it's better to start small to get them to fit. And then if you need them to be a little bit bigger, you can kind of tap your tool and it will build it out a little bit. So there's our first layer. And as you can see, there is like one right here that kind of bled together. If you want, you could erase that and try again. Maybe I'll do that for you. So I'm taking my Q-tip. And I just kind of twirl it to get the paint to come up. They do make Q-tips that have a pointy end that I've actually been meaning to get. It would make this so much easier. So we're just cleaning up those 2 dots that kind of bled together. Okay, I'm gonna use the eucalyptus leaf next. So for this part, we will use the guide marks, and we're just gonna do every other line will be a dot. Oh, and we're using the blue tool. Oh, you also want a paper towel to wipe your tool off in between to keep them nice and clean. Next, I'm going to use this green tool. I'm going to use the gold again. And I'm going to use the large end and do a dot just right on the top. And again, we're using these lines that keeps everything nice and straight. And then I'm going to use the other end of the green tool, which is a small end. Make sure it's nice and clean. Okay, then we're gonna walk the dots. So we're gonna take a little bit of the gold and we're just gonna dot it, and without getting any more paint, we're gonna walk it down the sides, and it will get smaller as you get towards the bottom. So we just dot. And walk it downward. Sorry if that's a little blurry. I'll put it down. And when you're doing these, if you keep dipping the paint and going in, you'll see it starts to build up a little bit on the end. So you'll just want to wipe it off and just try to keep it clean. You'll notice if it starts to build up, the dots will get bigger and it will be a little bit inconsistent. So just wipe it off when it does that and start over. Okay, now we're gonna do the other side. And there's the start of our pretty little flower. Next, I'm going to use the purple. And I'm going to use this blue tool. And just right in between these ones, I'm going to go in with the purple dot. Just like that. Pretty. Now I'm going to use the small end of the pink tool. And I'm going to use the gold. So when you're making your first dot, you can start at that line right above the top to keep it nice and straight. And we're going to walk these dots. Now we're going to go back the other direction. See how these ones have a point on the top? And then these ones are just the circle. We're gonna actually do another set of dots on top of this one where we'll put the point right up here. Hope that makes sense. Okay, now I'm gonna grab the green tool and I'm gonna take the peachy color and use the large end of the green tool. And we're gonna dot right above there to give us the point of the petal. And just do it right on that line to keep everything straight. Now you see that circle going around? This is just an example of guide marks. For this design specifically, we're doing a more geometric pattern where you want everything to be even. And so that guide mark, even with this pattern, with where we have these dots, you can kind of see that they're all lined up on that circle going around. So that lets you know that you're on track. Everything's lined up, you're good. Okay, so now we're gonna take the smaller end of the green tool, go back in that peachy color, and we're gonna walk the dots on top of this row. Pretty. Okay, next I'm gonna do the blue color. And I'm just kind of looking at the amount of space that we have here and then trying to find a tool that will fit. I'm gonna go with the bigger tool. This is the purple one. We're just going right, it fits perfectly in there. So I did not plan this design ahead of time. And that really is the beauty of this type of painting is a lot of it is just go with the flow. You do your guide marks to try to give you a good foundation and a good direction, and helps you keep everything in line and straight. But for the most part, we're just kind of seeing what fits where and just making everything as symmetrical as possible. So I'm going to take the larger end of the paint tool, and I'm going to go in with the gold. Okay, and for these petals, I'm gonna do 3 rows. So for the next one, I'm gonna use the larger end of the white tool, this one. And I'm gonna go in with the eucalyptus color. And we just go around again. Now, I'm gonna take this blue rod and I'm gonna use the purple, and I'm gonna use this to make the tip of the petal. And then I'm gonna take the large end of the blue tool and walk the dots. Okay, and then I'm gonna take the large end of the green tool, and I'm gonna go into the gold. If you can see, that got a little bit dried out. I'm just gonna take a couple drops of water, and I know not everybody likes that method, but it's what I do, so I figure I'll share with you. I think 1 or 2 drops of water doesn't make a huge difference to the texture of the paint. Some people will argue that, but I've done it for years and haven't had an issue with it ruining my paint or anything like that. So just gonna moisten that up a little. I'm gonna put Some little dots there. Pretty. Okay, and I am just going to fill in these little spaces right here, and I'm going to use the pink color. I'm just going to use the small end of the green tool. And I think I can fit 2 dots there, so. Just fill in those little gaps. And once this fully dries, we can wipe off those guide marks so that we don't see them anymore. So that is pretty much it for this beginner tutorial. Once this dries, we can do some top dots. So I will actually let this dry and then show you how to do top dots. You can leave it just like this, or you can add top dots if you'd like. And I'm just gonna show you how to do it just in case. So I'm just gonna take the colors that I already have and add a drop of white to have kind of a gradient effect on the top dots. So then we're just gonna do a dot on top of these big dots. So you just kind of want to take your tools and you can kind of hold it over and try to figure out what size is gonna be best. I think this one will be good for these dots. It just gives it a little pop and a little bit more dimension. So we will do the purple next. For these ones, I'm going to use this yellow teeny tiny rod. Lastly, we're going to do the blue. And I'm just using a paintbrush, a really old gross one, but it's my mixing brush. We'll use this blue rod. And there we have it. Once this dries, we will wipe off these guide marks and then add a varnish, and then we will be done. Okay, so now we're gonna erase the guide marks on here now that it's fully dry. I did bump the center there, so just ignore that. I'm using Pampers wipes. We're just gonna wipe off those marks. If I wanted to fix that center, I could just do another dot on top of there, but for this video, I'm not going to fix it. So then the final step will be to varnish. And I'm gonna use Deco Art Triple Thick. This is glossy. You could also use a matte gloss if you prefer. It's just up to you. I'm gonna use this brush. This is just a cheap set of brushes I got off Amazon. I can link them below, but it works great for varnish. So there's that. I'm just gonna let that dry. You can do 2 coats. I usually recommend doing 2 coats of the triple thick glaze, but you wanna wait until this layer completely dries before doing the second one. And here is the final result. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and give this video a thumbs up. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and we will see you guys next time.